Okay, welcome back to my series of videos about the Apprentice S 15E ready to fly airplane from E-Flite. And in this video we're going to talk about how to bind the better radio, which is the DX6 radio, to the aircraft. Now in the previous video you saw me how to program this, but now we need to get it bound to the aircraft. To do that, just to be safe, I've removed the prop. By the way, this airplane has flown quite a bit now, and just prior to starting the video, I did a thorough inspection of the wheels, everything, and made sure everything still looks good even after whatever number of flights we've done. It's also a good time to make sure the prop is tight because you took it off and now you can put it back on. Okay, so a bind plug like this came with the battery. Came with the aircraft. And I've got a battery that I used yesterday with the Mini Apprentice actually, and I'm going to use that to power up the airplane and do the binding. So the first thing to do is get the bind plug in the bind port, which is, you can see it right there. The bind port is the first port on the bottom of the receiver, and goes in like this, so that you got two sides of the bind port. Okay, so it will go in only in one direction, and let's get it in there. Okay, and I just make sure it's all the way down. Okay, now so after I plug in the battery, first, I got the battery lead hanging down here. I'm not going to strap it in. You get the three tones, but the receiver won't start flashing until you actually turn on the switch. I'm going to turn this a little bit so maybe you can see the receiver start flashing when when the thing gets turned on. Okay, so radio is all set. It is off. Remember, after we get this running, this should be 3 feet away from the airplane. So I'm going to lean back off camera here 3 feet and turn it on. And you'll hear the binding process if you listen carefully, because this thing talks to you. All right, so bind plug is in place. Let's plug in the battery. Now this is a 3S battery, but it's only 1300, but it'll certainly power us through the bind procedure. I usually use a used battery, so I used this one yesterday, and that's why I'm going to use it. It's down to 11.6 volts, so it'll be fine. Okay, I'm going to turn it on and watch for the light to start blinking. Okay, there it is, blinking right there. Get off camera, hold the bind button down, and turn on the radio.
Binding. DSMX 22 milliseconds. Normal mode. Binding complete.
Okay, so it all went through that. The orange light here is steady. If you listen carefully, you probably heard this thing say bind complete. That's good. Now the next thing to do is to turn off the switch. Unplug the battery just to make sure it's dead, and turn off the radio. The radio is now off. So I don't do any testing to make sure the airplane is working okay until I remove the bind plug. So it's important to remove the bind plug, and I do that with everything off. I can put the bind plug in there. Now we're going to go through the normal way of starting up the aircraft, which is turn the radio on first, make sure it's up and running. And obviously I'm on the Apprentice Safe model, so that's up and running. I'm now going to bat the switches off, and I'm going to plug the battery in. Tell you what, just so it doesn't get too upset, you might know where level is. I'm going to put it level. Okay. Okay, so we turn the switch on and wait for it to do its gyrations. everything's armed. It did its gyrations. I can see the orange light in there steady. So now everything's working. So let's make sure everything's working by move the tail up, down, left, right. Okay. And I'll test the ailerons in the next video because the next video is going to do a range check. And so I'll have the wing on, we'll do all that, and then we'll make sure that everything's moving in the proper direction and so forth. So these are moving right. The programming in 99% sure is right. And so we'll test that the ailerons in the next video. So bind looks good. I'm going to turn this off, which is the proper way to do it first. Turn the switch off, unplug the battery, and then turn the radio off as the last thing. Okay. The other thing about the radio that you have to make sure is you have to register your email address and put in a password at spektrum.com, and make sure you have the latest firmware installed in this, and there's instructions on how to do that on the SpectrumRC.com website. And if you don't, get some SD cards and do the updates as described, because the current version is, I think, 1.05. Came out in February 2016. They haven't changed it since now it's October 2016. They haven't changed it since then. So both the firmware is one update, and then a second update after you update the firmware is to update the sounds. So if this needs to have all the firmware updated and all the sounds updated, if you just got one out of the box, I'm sure it's probably not updated. We'll see. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.